Thank you for joining me. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Nicole Alderete Ferrini. I am the Climate and Sustainability Officer for the City of El Paso, and I'm actually here in Dallas, A, enjoying this amazing event, and B, I'm also a board member for the U.S. Green Building Council, Texas.
Wow, great. So is this what brought you to this event?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is probably my fourth EarthX. Just love coming out all the way from El Paso. I don't know if everybody knows this, and maybe in the audience it could be interesting. I'm actually 10 hours away from Dallas if I drove.
I've heard that. I mean, I've driven through El Paso, but I've never actually stayed there. And yes, it is a long drive.
It is such a long drive.
Texas is so big. So it's
Absolutely.
like having the thought of driving to El Paso is just like, oh my God, you're driving like through 3 states.
It is so crazy, right? And so just the example I always give everybody, I can drive from El Paso to Los Angeles in 12 hours. It takes me 13 to drive to Houston.
Oh,
so Texas is a big state, right?
It is. Yeah. See, now anybody that's listening, you know how big Texas is.
Exactly.
So
right.
it is on the border, but it's like, it's quicker to get to LA than it is to here.
Exactly right. And so, and part of the reason I tell that story often is that's what makes it so much more important to have events like this, where we're all coming together from all over the state. We're learning about what's going on in all the different, with all the different biologies, all the different geographies, all the different climates. And so just such an interesting and exciting place to be, not to mention it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is the first event I've come to like this.
Uh-huh.
I didn't even know it was a thing. So to learn that this huge convention, to learn from other people, and not just businesses, but from speakers from everywhere, to talk about this issue, a climate issue,
right,
that just doesn't affect DFW. It just doesn't affect Texas. Right. It affects the entire world.
Absolutely.
So learning from them has been such an eye-opening experience.
Yeah. You know what else is really wonderful about this event is it's so extraordinarily positive, right? I think it's so easy when we start to talk about the global climate crisis for it to feel so big.
Yes.
I often work with youth, and a lot of them use the actual term climate anxiety.
Yes.
Right. Our youth are very, very nervous about what their future looks like. And so it's easy to sort of fall into this very negative conversation about climate, this idea that no one's doing anything. And it's, but I think that when you come into an environment like this, you see so much energy, the private sector, you see government, you see educators, you see youth running around. Mm-hmm. You've got a great party going on outside. You've got an energy conference going on down the way. I mean, what it says is that as a community, Texans really are doing something.
Yes.
We really are making progress, and there really is hope, no matter how hard that may be to see sometimes, right?
Yes. And that has been so heartwarming too, is seeing these little kids on their field trips and learning, because I don't remember ever doing that at school. On a field trip. I used to go to the zoo and museums, but something like this that impacts the youth at such a young age, to kind of give them the eye-opening of even making it fun.
Exactly.
And like you said, it does cause anxiety. Even as an adult, it's like, am I doing enough? Am I doing this right? What else can I be doing? But I think the small changes that we are doing are going to add up. And we're spreading the word, especially with the youth now, to be able to kind of make it fun for them. And especially with school, because I spoke with people that are in the school district as well, of making it fun for the kids, making recycling fun, making, reusing bottles and, glasses fun again. So, yeah.
Well, and I think what it does is it creates an entire generation where this is completely second nature to them, right? It's not something that's a radical transition from something.
Yeah.
I think that's where I'm going to date myself right now. As a Gen Xer, I'm part of that generation that sort of grew up when nobody was talking about this, but I also became an adult and became a professional in an age where we were talking about it. Yeah. And so definitely a different approach for, my generation. And then you've got sort of millennials and Gen Z who, with millennials already being adults, they're a little more comfortable with it, but again, still with not, it's not second nature yet.
Yeah.
But these kids are the ones that are really going to change it, and we've got to make sure that we give them the platform to do it. And so this is a great thing for that.
Yeah, for sure. So what got you into the industry that you're in to work for the city of El Paso?
Yeah, so it's kind of a long story. I'll try to make it short. I actually practiced architecture for 12 years before I started working for the city of El Paso. And as a young woman in college, I wanted to study design and architecture because I really felt like I wanted to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that at that time I knew it was environmental. I think at that time I knew that I wanted healthy, happy, wonderful places for my community. And I wanted to have the skills to do that. So I thought, well, I'll be an architect, right? So I practiced, I studied, I practiced. But at some point I realized that, and I think it was probably around 2008, and I, without, exposing my politics too much, I will say that there was a certain man running for office in 2008. And he said that we could make a difference if we did it all together. Yes, we can, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a light bulb went off in my head in 2008. And I said, oh, okay, all right. And so I gave up 12 years of practice and became a public servant and started really moving decision makers in my community, right? And the last 10 years of that has been, and I just told everybody how old I am. But the last 10 years of making that change from the very beginning and really taking responsibility for what is happening in my community has been more gratifying than any building I could ever build. So that's how I ended up with the city.
Wow, that's amazing. So what kind of changes have you seen in your own city of you becoming into this new industry and this job?
So I think that what I've seen in El Paso is there's been a lot of growth in the last 10 years. I think that, we tend to spread out as cities, right? I think you see it in the DFW region as well, where, you've got multiple cities sort of right on top of each other. But I remember a day when there was a distance between Dallas and Fort Worth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now we're really sort of looking at that. Same thing in El Paso, right? Where we are actually the largest binational metroplex in the Western Hemisphere. We sit on, let me put it this way, Ciudad Juárez in Chihuahua, Mexico is 5 minutes from the front door of my house.
Yeah.
So we are one big, gigantic binational metroplex.
Mm-hmm.
And so I say all that just to sort of tell you that, that's where we've seen a lot of changes. We're growing, but we're also growing together as a community, as a binational community, and trying to understand how do you address environment? How do you address, social issues and equity and all of these things when you are binational like that? And so I think that's where I've seen the most focus over the last several years. But I will also just say, because a lot of people don't know this, El Paso has the largest mountain range in a city in the nation.
Yeah.
It's the Franklin Mountains. We've seen a lot more interest in preserving the mountains, preserving open space in the desert. I tend to see, folks see projects like rivers and forests and they go, oh, that's so beautiful and we want to preserve that. And they tend to think of the desert as just a pile of dirt.
Right.
It's kind of more than a pile of dirt. It's actually this really beautiful ecosystem. And so, again, understanding binationality and understanding the beauty of the desert is where I've seen that change.
Wow, that's great. So what do you see for the future of El Paso and even within Texas?
Yeah. So really excited. It's part of why I'm here in Dallas right now is that we're working really hard as the U.S. Green Building Council. We have a Texas chapter to bring all the biggest cities in Texas, there's 6, together to really have this conversation at a statewide level, right? So, if you think about the ecosystem I just talked about in El Paso, and then you compare that maybe to the bayous of Houston, right? Mm-hmm. And then everything in between.
Right.
There is this opportunity for us to come together, all 6 cities, in one of the, I'm going to say one of the best, brightest, and beautiful states in the nation.
Agreed.
Right?
Okay.
Right? Can we all agree?
I agree.
But having us all come together for a common cause and understanding what really creates a sustainable and resilient future for all of Texas, I think it's something we can do, and that's what excites me about the future.
Yeah, I think we need those leaders to kind of lead us in that direction so we can all come together.
Exactly.
It takes the leaders to come together to figure out what is needed in our smaller communities so we can all make that change that makes the biggest difference.
100%. And I think one of the things that is so important about that conversation and is really difficult in kind of the political environment that we have across the nation right now, really around the world, but it's real easy to get in a room with someone that you disagree with and just be mad.
Yeah.
Right? And just be ready to fight, armor up, ready to fight. I think that there is value in bringing folks together. Again, I mentioned this wonderful environment we're in today. You don't have to agree about every issue, right? You don't have to even agree. I had an experience not that long ago with a community member in El Paso who said, there's no climate crisis. And of course, my soul hurts a little bit when I hear that. But you know what? I still have to have a conversation with that gentleman because he's still part of my community.
Right.
And so having hard conversations without fighting each other, I think is really the biggest hurdle we have. It's not solving the climate crisis. It's learning how to talk to each other.
Yeah. And I think that's a huge goal that we have to choose for ourselves because, I talked to somebody earlier where there are extremists on each end.
100%.
And it's like we just want to yell at each other. And it just takes that patience and that grace to educate other people who don't believe that it's happening, because whether you believe it or not, it's happening, and there's something needs to be done.
Something
here.
has to be done, and I think that whether you believe in it or not, that's a separate conversation. But at the end of the day, do you love the beautiful environment that you live in? Do you want it to stay thriving, right? Surviving and thriving and being resilient. Do you want to see that? Do you want to see the kids of future generations be able to breathe clean air and have the same and or better opportunities that we've all had? I don't think anybody disagrees about that. And so again, I think it's just about when you set it up as somebody winning and somebody losing, you end up with half the people losing, and I don't think that that's this conversation.
Yeah.
So it's about shifting that paradigm, and that's such a cliche. But shifting that conversation and really looking at it like, what do we agree on? How can we move forward? And let's take our armor off.
Right. I mean, I think the conversation too is what are we doing that's going to affect your life?
Yeah.
Like if what we're doing is helping the planet and sustain everything that we have.
Yes.
So what is it that if we don't do this, like if we do something, it's going to help all of us.
That's right.
And if we don't, then we're just going to sit here and,
Absolutely.
rot here.
Yeah.
So it's like, what is it to you if we don't do anything or if we do something?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think that, getting folks that are resistant to understand that doing something doesn't mean they have to lose something.
Right.
Right. And frankly, I would argue the reverse. Everyone has something to gain. And simply by shifting that conversation in that way, what do you want to gain?
Yeah.
What does a great future look like to you? Let me just not even say the word climate for a second.
Right.
And let's just talk about the kind of future we can all agree on. And it's a lot easier said than done.
Right.
You and I are sitting here and we agree with each other. So it's easy to have that conversation. But I think that the future is going to hinge on a lot of us getting really comfortable, having some really uncomfortable conversations, and recognizing that, we can't let it go until we're all on the same page and pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for people like you who continue to push the agenda and continue to communicate and out there fighting for all of us.
Absolutely.
And for the community and for El Paso and Texas and everybody, because that's what we need. We need those leaders to kind of speak for us. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. This was a
Of
lot of
course.
fun.
Thank you. It was nice to meet you.
You too. I didn't get your name,
Melanie.
actually. Melanie.
Melanie.
I didn't
Yep.
get your name when we started. I said, I'm having this wonderful conversation.
I know. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.